It's kind of my aha moment, we were calling them, where I realized something that I hadn't anticipated my students were learning. There's so many things that you expect them to know and hope that when you test them they will know, but this was something that I didn't anticipate. Mr. Gansky from YSA had come to visit the school and talk with some of my students about what they had learned and what they had experienced, and he was talking to a young boy, Lorenzo, who is a bright kid, and I hadn't realized how much he had taken away from the project. And he asked him, he said, what's one of the things that you've learned? And I'm expecting him to talk about water scarcity and the plants that we had done and measuring and all these things. And he said, you know, I've really learned the value of patience. And that wasn't something that I had anticipated. He then went on to articulate all of how that value applies to creating a garden, using that garden, and he even then made an analogy to his own education. He said, just like having this garden where you plant the seeds and then have to wait many months before you can harvest it and see what comes to fruition, that's like me in middle school. He said, you have to put in a lot of hard work up front, get into high school, hopefully make it to college so you can get the career you want. He's a bright kid, and I was super impressed that he took that away from his project, not just kind of the rote memorization of standards, but this awesome life tool. And I think, myself included, many adults struggle with patience. So seeing my middle schoolers taking that away with them was something I was super proud of.
That's great. Krista, you and I talked a little bit about this idea of preparation. Where do you see this really triggering new behaviors and preparing these young people for high school and college and career?
Well, this is kind of a frustrating point for me, and it may not be a popular statement to make, but you know, we measure everything by standardized test scores, and that's how we tend to measure success. And you know, these are some skills that we can't measure by a standardized test. You know, the things that I see coming out in my kids, not only in my kids, but I get emails from parents saying, I don't know what you're doing, you know, but this isn't my child. And, you know, confidence, leadership, you know, when there's a kid in the classroom who stands in the corner and never takes the lead, and you get him outside and he's the one running the water quality test and showing out, you know, everybody else how to do it. I don't think a test can measure that. Communication, collaboration, just listening to others and being open to their ideas, planning, organizing. I mean, those you can't test those things. It occurs. We have a high school that all of our kids attend, and they currently have a dropout rate of about 33%. You know, pretty significant. And so I know for a fact that a lot of my kids, you know, they came in saying, you know, I used to hate science, and you know, I have a kid who now she's up until this year all Fs. All, you know, up through 8th grade, she never got a grade above an F. She got all A's this year. She's applying to the new STEM school and wants to be a biomedical engineer. You know, it's incredible what's happened. So, you know, again, you can't measure some of these skills, but they, you know, are kind of an unintended result.
David, I'm going to switch gears and as we close out the questions and ask you this. We've always said that at YSA it can't just be about student achievement, because if the kids think it's just a tricky way for them to get an A, then you know that's just a tricky way for them to get an A. But if there's actually something authentic, something really happening there, you know, where the community is changing, where they feel like they've got some connection to the real world. This isn't school, this is real, as that young man said. Talk a little bit about that community impact piece.
In our particular project, our school is a Title I funded school, and so we have about 80 or more than 80% that are free and reduced lunch. So the school has really become kind of a centerpiece for our community. Dental services are offered there. There's a clothing exchange offered on campus. We have parenting classes. We have English language classes for parents. Just all kinds of services. So we really bring a lot of the community onto the school campus. And this particular project that we did involved replacing, actually designing and replacing low water or high water use plants with low water use plants, and designing a landscape area to replace those plants with, which is great for a desert environment. You know, we need to have low water use plants there. It provided opportunity for the kids to really do something that their parents could come and enjoy and compliment them on. And it was great to see kids who were involved in this particular project show their parents around and say, this is what we did. We landscaped this area. I designed that plot. That was what I designed on this paper. And to show their parents and other community members what they'd done, the pride that they showed in that. And they did the work. They did all the design, they did everything. And there's a plaque commemorating them with their name on it. A lot of these kids, in fact, Mr. Harris and I have been there over 20 years, and so we're starting to get the kids of kids that we've taught, and that's one of the hooks for them. They're saying, one of these days you'll bring your kids here, and there's your name on that plaque because you did this. The pride that the community feels in seeing that is great, great pride, and it's good for the kids to see that as well. So I know it's really impacted our community in that way.
Pam, how about you? Where do you see the impact in the community piece of this?
Well, our project centered on an anti-littering campaign, and so the immediate impact, of course, was it made the neighborhood more beautiful and cleaner, and we took pride in that. But I think the longest lasting impact was that it really changed the relationship between the adults in the neighborhood and the students. In the past, many of our community members would view teenagers negatively. They might see a group of teenagers on the corner and automatically draw the conclusion that they were up to no good. So for them to see a group of teens gathered and organized and led an event to create a better place really made them change their perception. They realized that most young people want to be involved, want to make a difference, want to contribute. It's just that they need that learning opportunity to know how to go about it, and this was that opportunity. And in return, the students received this positive feedback. Shopkeepers came out of their businesses to thank them for their efforts. Family members became more involved. It just kind of grew from that change in that perception and that relationship. So I think it had a really profound impact in our neighborhood.
Thanks. Jake, how about in Colorado Springs? Fort Collins.
I was reflecting as people were talking about why don't some of these strategies work in a traditional classroom. And I think what we find is teachers get a curriculum and get really, really good at teaching that same curriculum year after year after year. And it gets very comfortable as an instructor doing that because we don't have to work as hard. And to be successful and to make real community change and have the kids buy in, it's about being aware around you and looking at your community needs. Because we can send kids out to rake leaves, but is that really what our community needs? And so when I look at what our kids have done, besides raising the awareness in our community of childhood obesity, childhood hunger, homelessness, renewable energy, behavior modification, wildlife refuge protection, and uranium mining, I'm reminded that we started an Adopt a Family program at one point, and we have 50 kids at Walmart one day shopping, and our school is the gang school. We're the bad kids. We're the hoods, and we have all these kids walking through and wearing our Lincoln gear, showing pride, something they've never done before, and they're embarrassed to go to that school sometimes. And we had people stopping them and say, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "Oh, we're shopping for Adopt a Family program. We're helping, over 60 members of our school and their families. We're doing that." And the community said, "Wow, that's awesome," and it changed that perception. 8 years ago, we were a school of about 850 middle school students. And when that reputation really started to set in, we dropped down to about 325 and got put on a school closure list. And something had to change. And in the last few years, specifically with STEMester of Service, we've seen our enrollment already in 2 to 3 years jump to about 550, and we're off that school closure list. But it's about, you know, we change the community based on its needs, not based on some curriculum that I think or the standards that someone else thinks they have to do. We can drive all those through community needs of today.
That's great. Those are really, really powerful stories. Thank you. You know, I went to a presentation recently with some great colleagues, organizations that you know well in the room. I'm not going to name names. And they talked about high school dropout prevention and tremendous results. And they had the charts up there. And at the end of it, one of my colleague CEOs said, "This is amazing what we've been able to do. The problem is it's not sustainable. We cannot afford to solve this problem using this methodology because it costs too much. It just simply costs too much. It's not sustainable. We raised a ton of money. We affected a small number of students. It worked, but it costs too much to take this nationwide." And I'm looking at this program, and for very little, I think we gave you guys maybe $5,000 each. It was not a lot of money. It was not a lot of money. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but the infrastructure was there, you were there, your energy was there, things that we couldn't buy. But talk a little bit about, Mary,